I wasn't a drug addict or a criminal overnight, right? I have 27 felonies on my record. That's just what I got caught for. So we were raised LDS. I'm the youngest of three kids. Mom had an affair, and I was the result of that. Never really had a relationship with who my real father was. The Other Side Academy was an opportunity that was presented to me in lieu of my prison sentence.
Just a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon a program that is saving taxpayers millions of dollars to reform the lives of criminals and ex-convicts. This organization is called the Other Side Academy, and it's growing here in Utah, and it's changing and shaping the way we think about prison and prison reform. So I'm sharing with you over the next few months stories of people from that program, and it's my pleasure to present to you today the story of Jordan Holdaway. How do you go from being the bad kid in school, getting in trouble, not, hanging around the bad kids in your environment, and turning your life around to such a degree that now you're a part of a really successful construction company?
Well, some of it is definitely some form of grace, right? I lived my life super disruptive, very self-centered, a criminal lifestyle, and I got the opportunity to go to the Other Side Academy, which is the umbrella company that runs the Other Side Builders, right? The Other Side Academy is a 2.5-year life skills and vocational training school that I got the opportunity to go to in lieu of a 5th prison sentence that I was headed back for probably close to a decade. And came to the academy, unlike anything I'd ever been through before. I'd been through many treatment programs. I'd been in and out of prison over and over again, tried AA, you name it. 20 years of being a drug addict and
Felony convictions.
Yeah, 27 felony convictions on my record. That's what I got caught for, right? So that life was so kind of on a roll of the dice from a prosecutor. Prosecutor said, you've done it this time. We'll give you a shot to try this program, but you're going to plead guilty to everything that we've got you for. So we've got, a significant amount of time over your head, and we're going to let you go to the Other Side Academy. And it was a relatively new program. I mean, it had only been open for a few months at that time. And all I knew about it really was it was run by some ex-convicts who had come from California, and it was sort of a boot camp for career criminals and, habitual criminals that had been in and out of the system. And it was, the way I was going to stay out of prison. And that was what it was to me at first, right? It was an opportunity to get out of the jam I'd gotten myself in. Past that, I wasn't thinking much about it. I had reached, I was 35 at the time. I had reached a point where I was sick of the life I was living, but I didn't know how to get out of it, and so I came to the academy and went through the process. Dave DeRocher, our director, Lola Zaghi, she was our, the women's program director, and they had both come from Delancey Street in California, where they had gotten their lives together. Both, broken stories. Dave been in and out of prison for 25 years, had gone to Delancey Street, done really well there, put his life together, actually run the facility for, I want to say it was 5 years that he ran the facility and was a student there for so an 8-year total time that he spent there. And so here I was in this environment of, it's a peer-driven therapeutic community. That's the model that the Other Side Academy is. And so there's not clinicians, there's not counselors, there's not therapists. It's a bunch of ex-cons and ex-drug addicts who have gotten their lives together, teaching other ex-cons and ex-drug addicts how to get their lives together. And so a lot of the games, a lot of the little manipulation things that I knew that you pick up over time, being able to tell a doctor, hey, this happened to me and this happened to me, and oh, whoa, and now I'm the victim, when in reality I was the monster that was out there, victimizing the community. That didn't fly at the Other Side Academy because it was other people just like me calling me on my stuff. And so it wasn't an overnight process. For about the first year that I was at the academy, I acted like a convict. That's who I was when I came in there. The magic hadn't happened for me yet. But after about a year of being there, I really did start to see changes that were taking place both in me, but also in my peers, watching this organization grow, watching as it made an impact in the community. So it kind of creates a buy-in for you, right? It's more than just, hey, I'm going to some program for a little bit of time. I'm going to sit around and work my way through some whatever little hoops I need to jump through. This was actually a community within the community, a family, and the success of the businesses. The academy is completely free. We keep the doors open by generating revenue with our businesses, and so to be put in a position where it's kind of like a family-owned business. The success of the business relates to the success the academy is going to experience, the options that you're going to be able to experience, and also the future opportunities for other people to come along. And so some of these things are instilled in you as they're teaching you, and they're impacting you, and it's changing the way you're looking at things. You're finally belonging to something. And I was no dummy. I was always a guy that maybe too much energy and too many things to think about, so would get into mischief and stuff as a kid, and then that turned into past mischief, into criminal stuff and things like that. But to have that energy and those things channeled in a place where I could be held accountable for the wrongs that I did and called out on those things, and be able to fix some of those things, but also supported in the potential and the other things that I had going on. I think that combination is what really created, just a petri dish for change for me. And so, about 4 years into being at the academy, I stayed there for 4 years as a student. About 3 years into that stay, I was in some leadership positions, different things like that. And the construction team is what we had there. It was called construction. And what we did is basically just take care of the facility, fix the things around there. If the moving company would damage somebody's, house or something, a scratch on the wall or scratched up floor, we'd go fix it, do that stuff. And I just saw the potential. And I asked Dave, I said, we spend a lot of money hiring contractors to come in and do stuff here. I think that we have the skill set where we could grow, and I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to help create that. So I told Dave, I said, why don't we get our contractor's license and save the academy money by fixing the things here and being able to pull permits and do everything that way. Great learning opportunity for students to go through that process, but we could also start generating some revenue too. So that was the birth of the Other Side Builders. About a little over 4 years ago. So
that's awesome.
Yep.
So one thing you said that stuck out to me, you said you were understanding you weren't the victim, you were the monster. How long did it take you to come to that understanding?
I think I'd gleaned little pieces of it, right, over the 20-year career that I had of the negative lifestyle, right? There was little pieces. I told you before we started talking that I was raised right. I was raised with morals and values. I was just a bad apple. I chose some wrong paths. So that piece was in there of knowing that I had been doing wrong for a long time. But I'd say at about 15, 18 months in is really when it sunk in, and I was able to look at myself. One of the things that is really kind of unique about the Other Side Academy, as opposed to a lot of other treatment programs and other stuff, is the minute that you get there, you're asked not to talk about your past, right? Most places you're digging into the traumas, you're digging into all these things, and you're kind of working through all that stuff. At the academy, from the minute you get there, we don't care what you did. We don't care what got you here. All we care about is what you're going to do right here, right now, today. And that's how the academy is very focused, right here in the present moment, looking forward to the future. What is that going to be? And so you're judged on a daily basis with your peers. You're put in, you're working alongside people, you're living alongside them, you're doing this just high intensity where you're spending a lot of time. All your flaws are coming out.
Hey, your guys today, I'm just watching them dripping sweat while they're pouring this concrete.
Yep.
This is really hard work.
Yeah.
That gets you exhausted.
And those guys will go home from that job today and they'll go back to the academy and they'll be involved in programming. Tonight's Thursday night, so they'll do a TED Talk. So what that means is somebody within the academy, one of the staff members, one of the master students, one of the older people will do a presentation, and the whole house will be there. Every night there's something structured. So these guys are working together in our different businesses. They're living together. They're practicing new beliefs and doing all kinds of stuff, and they're calling each other out twice a week in what we call groups, breakthrough groups. And we can talk about that a little bit more, but Yeah. So for me, it was,
But you eventually, you said it took 17, 18 months before you were really able to look in that mirror and realize, you know what, I'm not a victim here.
yeah.
I was the bad apple. I got myself into this. And that didn't occur to you by looking back at your past. How did it occur to you just focusing on day to day and working so hard?
Well, let me tell you. So at 2 years into the academy, I had done some things in that first year. Remember, I told you I kind of was a knucklehead, a convict, not like the worst in the world, not going around being too crazy, but I was sneaky. I was duplicitous. And that's not a go at the Other Side Academy. The Other Side Academy is all about bringing things to the forefront, cleaning up. We call it cleaning up when you've done something wrong and then you bring it forward and say, look, I did this and I want to throw it out there. I want to put it on the altar for everybody to see and we can deal with this thing, right? I didn't do that. So I maintained contact with a girlfriend that I had during that first part, the old, we're going to ride or die through this, just this dysfunctional relationship, all this stuff. And that's not a go at the academy either. Maintaining relationships with significant others or anything like that you came in to that.
You got to ditch all your relationships and let them go for a while.
And so I made some phone calls to her when I'd get out of the house, and you're never alone at the Other Side Academy. You always have partners, right? So obviously I didn't do it alone. I had other people with me. And in that, I was allowing other people to do things negatively that were harmful to themselves, just like me calling my girlfriend, in a sense, was harmful to myself. I'm breaking the rule of the very place that's keeping me out of prison.
Mm-hmm.
And so, anyways, at 2 years into this, some of that stuff comes back out. And I had grown and gotten into some leadership positions and stuff, but at 2 years, all these things came out about what I had done early on. And it's a lot more complex, but we only have so much time, right?
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I was given an opportunity from Dave. He looked at me and he said, "Look, if I let you go, 2 years is usually the graduation time that you're in the program. If I let you graduate at this point, knowing that you've held on to this stuff this whole time because you've been doing well, you've done what's been asked of you, you've been showing, but it's all been a show because you didn't take care of this thing at the start." And I understood everything that he was saying. I had learned exactly, the whole point. He said, "So I'm going to give you an opportunity." He says, "You can either walk out of here right now and get on with whatever you're going to do, because if I let you graduate in the condition that you're in, you'll be back in prison or dead in the next 6 months or a year. So you can either leave and get on with doing that, or you can start over and do this the way you were supposed to do it the whole way." And like I said, 17 months into it, 18 months into it, I really had bought into where I was at. And I played the tape forward. I looked at where my life was at. And, honestly, I was probably outside the trouble that I had gotten myself in. I had more or less completed my probation at that point. But I knew when Dave told me that what he was saying was absolutely true. And so you asked, well, what was the thing that got me there? And the fact that I let down the people in the house, right? So I had spent 2 years building relationships with my peers, being a leader, being depended on, working with other leaders, all those other things. And here, my actions, my self-centered, selfish actions had not only, harmed my ability to graduate the program, but that was the minimal. But I had left a whole bunch of people who had become, to depend on me, to trust me, all these other things. I'd left them hanging. I had done the very same thing that I always did for the 20 years before.
So even though it was a lot more minor,
I wasn't on drugs.
Yeah, you weren't on drugs. You were sober. You were doing the job. You were showing up, doing everything, but you were still sneaky.
I was still sneaky.
Duplicitous.
And that's the problem. And so if I walked out of the Other Side Academy still sneaky, still duplicitous, what is going to be my solution to the damage? Because it always comes out, right? The damage that you cause when you're that person, when you're not on the up and up, when you're manipulative, all those things, you might get over on some people for a short period of time, but it always comes out. It always manifests itself in how things are in life. So what's going to be my balm for those broken relationships and stuff? I'm going to go right back to the same cycle that I always have. So that's what the academy does. We focus on behaviors, and that's how we find a solution to the addiction problem.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, I've been clean and sober now it'll be 9 years in December. And I don't think about using drugs. I don't have any of the overwhelming stuff because today my life is based off of who am I right now in this moment? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? If I fall short, am I speaking up and taking my accountability for where I've fallen short?
And I think that is so powerful that Dylan said, the BS detector of all of you guys is very sensitive because you're all kind of from the similar background. You've played the part of, and you know how to dish out the BS and have people take it. But because you were all among each other, the BS radar was up on Dave DeRocher because he had seen it so many times. He knew what you were doing and called you out on it. And I think that's,
and he cared. It wasn't just a piece of him just calling me out on it, that I had whatever. He cared. He saw something in me, and he knew that in order for me to, he knew what the recipe was for me. And for each person, it's their own thing. But he knew that for me, it would be for me to put my past behind me, move forward, and be everything that I could possibly be. It was going to take this big journey, right? It was going to take this arduous thing that I was going to have to do, this humility that I lacked. But and when Dave gave me this opportunity, he had this look of disappointment in his eyes, and he let me know. He said, "You've disappointed me more than anybody, and I've been doing this for 15 years." And so that gives you an idea kind of where our relationship was at, it wasn't just like, I'm just this guy coasting through this thing. And so when I saw that look in his eyes, and this was probably one of those moments that just totally changed the direction of my life. I realized it was the same look that I'd seen in my mom's eyes. I'd seen in, women that I'd been in relationships with, employers, teachers, anybody, any mentor, anybody that had been anything to me in my life. I had always let them down and disappointed them with my actions. And something changed in me in that moment. And I said, I'm never going to see that look in someone's eyes again. And I did. I had the path. I had the tools laid out to me that I needed to achieve that goal. Now it was time to put them into use. And that moment changed something in me. And as I go about my life today, that's who I am. I'm constantly checking myself. I'm not perfect. Nobody's perfect, but I do live a life that's based off accountability, which is a complete opposite of who I ever was. I was never that guy. I was always had to skirt out and come out on top, whatever it was. And today, the peace of mind that I have, the consistency, the relationships, the deep, meaningful relationships that I have today, I wouldn't trade them for any. And that's the hard part, right? Getting somebody to that point. Because if you've never had a good life, you've never had those things, you've never had great relationships and deep, meaningful commitments and all that stuff. And I didn't have those things because I chose to live the way that I did. Those opportunities were there. But if you've never lived that way, that's the piece you got to get somebody to, right? To get them to buy into something like that. Once you have a taste of that connection to the community, the connection to the people around you, you have something that you won't trade, And my life was cheap before. It was filled with cheap feel goods. I would trade my well-being. I would trade your well-being. I would trade whatever for the cheapest feel good that you could ever. And I know the value of things today.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great story. The other thing that strikes out to me about you talking about how maybe you were different, you had a lot of energy. And I see this happening to kids in schools that have a lot of energy where, they can't function well in a classroom. It's just, they just want to run. They want to be physical. They want to do other things. Our boy, he is just like that. It is so hard for him to settle down, and he's so bright. What do you do with these kids who really just they're wired a little bit different? They don't fit in the classroom setting so well, and then they just start rebelling because that's how they have their outlet. How do you rechannel a kid like that?
I think you really have to find something for them to belong to. I think a kid that is full of that rambunctious energy, I know for me, I was always looking for something to belong to. Can I go back into my childhood story a little bit? So, my mom she had an affair. So we were raised LDS. I'm the youngest of three kids. Mom had an affair, and I was the result of that, right? And so, mom and my brother and sister's dad, that's who I knew as my dad. Never really had a relationship with who my real father was. But anyways, they divorced when I was about 6 years old. Tried to make it work, didn't work out. Mom moved me and my brother and sister back here to Utah into the LDS community that we had grown up in. And so now here's kind of this stigma, right? So I'm 6, 7 years old, and the community knew all about the situation. It had occurred in the same place. And so I kind of started in this whole world of being an outsider at that point. And I couldn't put it together in my head. I was too young to understand, but there was something about me that felt as though I didn't belong to this group of people. And I wanted to belong. I did everything that I could. I yearned to belong to this group and that group and whatever. And so when there's kind of that openness of not fitting in, you're going to find it somewhere. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that started to happen with me is I would come down to Salt Lake City in the summertime and hang out at a YMCA camp. That was, my mom would put me in this YMCA camp, make sure I had some structure and was doing some stuff. And it was a lot of inner city kids. And so I started picking up on some of their behaviors, and then I'd take it back to suburban, Mormonville where I was, and I'd get a reaction. And so here was that identity started to build. And so you ask, how do you help somebody that's edging towards that thing? I think they're looking for something to belong to, and you've got to find that right fit for them. As a father of your kid, right? You got to find the right fit, and that's going to take some effort on your part. And I think and today is just such a different world, right? I mean, I grew up 30 years ago, and there's so much more stimulus out there today, right? For these kids to latch onto, and just being mindful of what are you ingesting? Who are they spending their time with? What are the influences? Because it's true to every one of us. We are the sum total of the people we spend our time with.
Yeah. And I see the world today compared to how I grew up, and I had a lot of energy, but I had a lot of outlets, I could just run around my neighborhood in the mountains, wherever I wanted. I was just free range kid, and kids don't have that so much today. A lot of them just play video games a lot. They get their stimulation from screens. And I'm like, God, how do you deal with all that energy? And it just seems like medication's common these days, but I think finding that proper outlet has got to be critical.
We've kind of shot ourselves in the foot. I think, society-wise, I have a 17-year-old, so you see it. They would rather watch somebody else do things on a screen than actually experience them themselves. And I've even seen it secondhand, them watching somebody watch somebody on a screen. Yeah, have you seen that? No. Have you experienced that? Where they're watching YouTube, and on YouTube is a guy watching playing video games. And I'm like, wow, you've kind of divorced yourself from the whole thing. I mean, it's bad enough the video games, right? But now you're watching
somebody play video games.
Yes.
So the guy's commenting on the guy who's playing it, and you're watching that. Yeah. Wow, I haven't seen that.
Yeah, I guess it's pretty common, because I brought it up to some other parents, and they're like, yeah, my kids are doing that too. So living in a false reality. I think speaking truth, identifying what people's strengths are, and also their weaknesses, and helping them work through those things, and having open conversations. Look, these are some things that are weaknesses that you have, and having those weaknesses can lead to A, B, C, and D, right? But today there's such a sensitivity to being able to talk to people like that, just open, saying, hey, they might become offended or those different things. And I'm grateful today. I have people that talk direct to me, tell me where I'm falling short. I know that their intent is in my best interest, and sometimes it's not. But I've learned how to listen and absorb to what's going on around me.
Yeah. And the other thing I notice I've only observed your crew twice, but nobody's standing around watching, and they're all really engaged. And most crews, it's like 3 guys doing the job, 4 guys taking a smoke break. You'll you'll just get this sort of, oh, I can't wait to get out of here type attitude. It seems like that the work ethic is instilled into the program. How do you do that?
You know, when you come in there, the culture is established, right? So the culture is established. When I walked in there, I've been to prison multiple times. First time I walked into prison, the prison culture was established. When you walk into it, that is what you're going to be surrounded with. Those are what is going to be thrown at you. At the Other Side Academy, the culture of hard work, self-sufficiency, honesty, integrity, commitment, all those things, it's established. So
It's
when
baked into that
it's
cake.
baked in.
Right.
So when you come in there, that's what you're instantly met with. And you'll push against it, but you'll see that the culture is strong and that it is real, because that's what we do. Human beings will walk into a new situation, we'll walk into a thing, and we'll test it, right? We'll see how serious are these guys about what they're saying. And you learn real quick at the academy, it's established. It is what it is. And so when you say, nobody at the academy is, all these guys, it's not costing them anything to come there. There's no fees for the students. We don't take federal or state funding. We don't take any tax dollar money. So we are literally generating our own revenue. And that's a part of the buy-in process, right? You're going to pay. You got your life messed up. You're going to pay with your hard work and your effort to get out of it. And at the same time, you're going to learn how to function in real time with the stresses of employment, work, responsibilities, all these things while you're working on the problems inside of yourself, rather than taking, say, a month vacation at some ski lodge up in the mountains to go over the traumas of your childhood and, take a break every 20 minutes and do that. The academy is very intense, very upfront. And so the pace is set for you, right? And I don't know, it's just human nature, I guess. Where you get dropped into, the tank you get dropped into, you're gonna sink or swim. And the guys that are gonna swim, you see the product is that they're hardworking. You take a cell phone, the distractions of a cell phone, smoke breaks, all the things that you just mentioned away, and we have a 5-star construction company. We have a 5-star moving company. We have 5-star thrift stores. All of our businesses are running like crazy because our guys aren't distracted. They're not worried about when you come to the academy, you're going to take a break from your kids. You're going to take a break from your wife, your husband. This period of time, if you have any of those things, even from your family, you're going to step away from it. All those distractions are removed from you, and you're able to focus completely on yourself and the things you need to change. And so so it's like you're creating a culture where your focus is on the work, your focus is on progress and self-development rather than all these externalities and the physical work that you've come out and seen, right? Those guys just busting their butt, and they love it. They do it with smiles on their faces, and that's not a fake thing. That's not a the camera crew's here, you guys act this way. That's who they are. They wake up in the morning and they're animals. They're ready to go out there and handle that. But that same work ethic that you see displayed on the job sites are movers. They run from the truck back and forth carrying the boxes, the whole time. And they're not taking home a paycheck. It's crazy when once somebody gets a paycheck at, they go out and get a job and do stuff, how some of these things start to shift inside of yourself because now entitlement starts to kick in and these different things. But what I wanted to say was, as hard as they're working on those jobs, they're working on themselves. They're working on whether it's laziness, whether it's their dishonesty, the manipulation things, whether it's, maybe being greedy, maybe it's being codependent or needy, those different things. Those guys are working on those behaviors about themselves just as hard as they are out there laying that concrete.
Yeah, it seems like more than anything, it's like a behavior boot camp.
It is.
I'm curious, how do you go from starting a construction company where you're going to fix the holes or damage you might do with a moving company to just a few weeks ago, you did a grand opening of a donut shop, a huge commercial building that you guys built from the ground up. How do you learn those skills and develop that skill set in such a short period of time?
Well, so, again, it's not always what you know. Sometimes it's who you know, and being able to network and find opportunities of other contractors that are willing to help teach us. I've spent time with some other general contractors sitting in and having meetings and having them teach me the ropes of this, that, or the other. Dylan does a great job of going out there and meeting guys on site, because Dylan's basically our field supervisor and takes care of those things. And so those relationships that you build and finding guys that are like-minded and understand our mission and are willing to come in and help teach the things that we lacked. I have some years of construction experience before this started, but again, my life was in disarray. I was kind of a jack of all trades, master of none, right? A little bit here, a little bit there, doing those things. But like, you can show me something one time and we can figure it out. So there was some schooling that took place when I made the offer to, hey, let's start this construction company. They said, then go figure out what you need to do to get licensed, to do those things, get that in place. So trust was put in that position of being able to do that. And that created another level of, okay, here, these guys are backing me. They're trusting me. That matters to me. We're going to do a good job. And so we started off with just some small residential jobs. That's kind of what we cut our teeth on, because we had been doing that for the academy, remodeling apartments, upgrading this or that, doing repairs of these things. And so we started off with some decks and a couple of bathrooms, and then maybe some basement finishes. And it was like, is this going to work? Right? I'm super stressed out. I'm like, how is this going to work? I've never managed a company like this before, and I'm asking for help here. I'm saying, hey, how do I do this? Finding opportunities that will help this grow. And we're continuing to do that still today. We're always
So kind of getting out of your comfort zone as you're able to, and learning more and more.
learning more and more, and then sometimes you'd have guys come on the crew, students that had come in, and you get guys that sometimes have skills, and then you get guys that don't have skills, right? And what we try to do is we try to match what's going to be best for the student in the situation that they're in, right? And so that's a big deal to try and figure those pieces out, because some guys, maybe they've got years of construction experience, but going into the construction team for us, maybe that wouldn't be the best fit for them, because that's kind of what they've hidden behind their whole life, right? And so, but other times, maybe we need a guy to help do some of these things, right? And what it'll benefit the guys that don't have enough knowledge. So it's a constant balance. There's a lot of balls in the air that we're juggling to try to figure that piece out. Mm-hmm. And but the biggest thing is, I'll tell the guys as they come on the crew, I don't care what you think you know how to do or what you've said you know how to do. What I care is that you show up and you're a team player, and you get in with the guys and you make sure that everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing, and you get in the groove. And so we have a pretty good team that gels. We have personnel changes all the time because guys graduate, guys move on to other things. And so you have to figure out that balance. How do I get the new guys that don't have a lot of experience trained up to a point? I've got maybe a year, 18 months, 2 years to get this guy from the guy that's brand new, we got him cleaning up the job site, to being in a crew boss position where he's going to be running stuff. What are the things that I need to focus on with him to help him become that
Well,
person?
I mean, it sounds like they're really getting a vocation. If they're going from cleanup crew to crew boss, and they're learning all these skills along the way, can they go out and get really good jobs working for construction companies?
Yeah, our graduates are highly sought after. So I've had guys that have skills that have worked, been on our crew the entire time that they've been there, and what they've really done is refined those personnel skills, right? Like you're talking about the management skills, their interpersonal skills. Because a lot of these guys have maybe worked some construction their whole life. But why do they always lose their job? Because they fall short in character defects and certain things, right? They lie at the wrong time. They're showing up late to work. They're doing this or that. So maybe those are the things that those guys need to really polish and get into a place and learn how to be a team player, learn how to deal with it when the boss tells you something that's hard to hear, so that you can show up and still be there with a smile on your face. Mm-hmm. So, but our guys, the guys that come off of my crew, are always highly sought after. And some of those guys, we try to have a well-rounded experience for them. We don't focus on just any one thing in construction. We do flat work, we do carpentry, we do tile work, we do landscaping, we do it all, right?
Wow.
We have plumbing and electrical subcontractors that come out and work on our job, because those are specialty trades, but great relationships with them. And we've gotten a lot of our guys jobs with those guys after the fact.
And just for anybody watching or listening who didn't see the first segment, this is a social enterprise, meaning it's for ex-convicts people who've got multiple felonies facing prison time. Watch the first segment if you didn't see it. But is when you are taking these guys through your 2-year program and now it's time to reintegrate in society, it just reminds me like the Shawshank Redemption. They kind of get institutionalized. They get used to that environment. They get used to being told what to do and all that structure. Is it hard going back and reintegrating with society in a normal way?
So we have, you don't have to leave at 2 years if you don't want to. You can stay as long as you want because we're not based off a funding model. So again, I stayed 4 years, even though I did start over, but I still stayed 4 years. And we oftentimes have guys stay 3-4 years and stick it out. Now you're probably referring to the 2-year guys who are going to get out there. Mm-hmm. Either way, whether you're a 4-year guy or a 2-year guy, we have a phenomenal transition program. That's a year-long program for our graduates. And during that time, we're going to offer affordable housing. So the first few months that they're there, they can live there rent-free. They can save up their money. Every one of our graduates has a job waiting for them when they walk out the door. We find them a job. They don't have to go out there and search and get on the buses and do this stuff. We'll hand them a set of keys to one of our cars and say, you can use the vehicle. I'd say 90% of our graduates have their driver's license by the time they're done. Sometimes there's a 10%, ratio in there of they've done something to their driving record that even we can't help get it into place. But anyways, we'll hand them a set of keys. Here's a car. Go out there. You can use our car until you've got enough money saved up to get your own vehicle. We'll guide them through the process of their money. Mountain America Credit Union, Ally Bank. We have all these great relationships with these different entities, and they will come in and spend that time over that next year teaching these guys how to manage their money, how to save their money. We have a match program that they can get involved in, where if over this year's time they save $5,000, we'll match that $5,000 for them. And so by the time say you've come in, you've done 2 years as a student. You've spent that another year as a graduate student working through this process. You've spent 3 years in a structured, healthy environment that's transitioning you back out to the world. You've built a lot of relationships with new people, but also in the world outside of people that can help you succeed.
Yeah, are they still hanging out together a lot after they graduate?
Oh, yes.
So it's a clean, sober environment still. It's not going back with the same crowd they were hanging out with before.
Yep. Yeah. And that's one of the first warning signs that you always see. If you start pulling away from the academy and going back to old relationships or old things, that's one of the first warning signs that you see that somebody's, hey, you're going to start falling off. And it's, if you're in a big hurry to get out of the structure of the Other Side Academy, what are you in a big hurry to get to? We live with accountability. We live with, we know about what's going on in everybody's life with each other, myself included. My fiance, Dave, we're all friends. We're all family, but we all know what's going on in each other's lives. Mm-hmm. And so if you're starting to live a life where you don't want everything that you're doing, out there on the front page, then that's kind of one of those warning signs. At least that's what I've learned over time. If I'm not okay with you talking about what I'm doing, then why am I doing it?
Mm-hmm. And you guys have like a 90% overall success rate, whereas, not to discredit all these other programs, just that caveat, but like Odyssey House, I've talked to so many homeless people, been through Odyssey House. They're everywhere. You see them all over the valley. Those are 90-day programs. It just doesn't seem like you can change somebody's behavior in 90 days. It doesn't sound like
you're just scratching the surface. You're just barely starting to, if that person's been clean off of drugs for 90 days in that period of time, their brain's just starting to defog. And we go through that at the academy, right? You're dealing with those things. You're just getting to know who they are. You're just getting to know those things. So, about a year into the process, maybe 15 to 18 months, people are starting to actually make some changes. That's why it's critical to stay until you know that you're ready, because maybe at 15, 18 months, you're starting to really behave in a different way, but you haven't done it consistently for a long enough period of time for it to be who you are and what you're about. I wasn't a drug addict or a criminal overnight, right? It started off with this little compromise, then this little compromise, then this, then trying this, and this and that. And before I have this huge criminal record. But it didn't happen overnight. And it's the same process in reverse, to be able to reverse some of that stuff.
I want to go back to behavior boot camp because we've had kids from the foster program. We're adopting our daughter right now. And so I see that public schools especially are struggling more than ever with behavior. And they've got these things called IEPs where a special person is allocated to come and sit with the child. 2 of our kids went through that. And it's like you see what's going on with the homeless situation in downtown Salt Lake, and you realize talking to these people fired from job after job, convicts, it's a behavioral problem. Yeah. Why do you think the government is so on board with giving these people free housing and not on board with a behavior boot camp? Like prison is a little bit strict, but a lot of people get bad friends in prisons. It doesn't really change behavior, but what you guys are doing does. Why don't you think the government is interested in funding something like that?
Well, there's all the conspiracy stuff that you can go off into, but let's not go there. Let's just say that we've gotten ourselves into a little bit of a pickle, and I think it comes down to even more than just government, but us in general as a society. We've started to tell ourselves that I should never not feel bad. I should never feel bad. And so anything that's uncomfortable, anything that's painful, anything that's embarrassing, any of those different things, somehow we've got it in our heads that we shouldn't feel that way. And so now we've started to medicate ourselves. We've started to, permit behavior that used to be considered damaging or dangerous. We've now
never allowed.
Yeah, now it's there's no consequences for actions in a lot of places, and I think it's coming from that sense of us as a society where we have, look, why do you get embarrassed?
Because you did something wrong, you don't want to admit it.
Okay, and so embarrassment, rather than being something that you should try to hide or cover up or do all these other things, it's a warning sign. It's a warning sign from whether you want to call it your soul, your psyche, your mind, whatever. The thing that is you is telling you something needs to change here. Why do you have anxiety? Why do you get depressed? These are all things that are natural human. They're part of being a human being. But for some reason, we've started telling ourselves, I shouldn't be this way. And we look for the quick fix rather than looking at, okay, why am I anxious? And attacking the issue of the anxiety, like why am I, what's causing my anxiety? Mm-hmm. What's causing my depression? We've gotten off track, I think. And so that's what we've done. We've created now, rather than, they call it compassion now, to continue to allow people that are drug addicts and living homelessly on the streets to go about using drugs, dying on the street corners, stealing from places. They call it compassionate by not taking them and putting them in jail or prison, right? Jail or prison is harsh. The Other Side Academy was an opportunity that was presented to me in lieu of my prison sentence. Mm-hmm. I deserved every prison sentence I ever had. I was a monster. I was out there doing things, and like I kind of alluded to earlier, I have 27 felonies on my record. That's just what I got caught for. Mm-hmm. I was out there doing that, and that's the reality of the world out there. But the fact that there are minimal consequences today gives nobody motivation to change, right? Our whole moral compass has kind of gotten tweaked and twisted to now where we're allowing people to do so.
And what gets me is it's happening right when kids enter kindergarten. Mm-hmm. My daughter was leaving the classroom just because she felt like it. She just didn't want to be there. It was boring. She already kind of knew how to read. Kindergarten's boring. I'm going to leave. And I intervened. I said, do what we do at home. Put her in timeout chair. Oh, no, we can't do that anymore. Mm-hmm. That's not what we do. We have a IEP. You can sign it, and we'll assign a special person to sit next to her to remind her to stay in the class. And I was like, don't you think that's overkill? And I actually got in trouble for speaking up and saying, no, just put her in a timeout chair. It's like, why are we shifting this to create fragile little children who can't handle a little bit of discipline so they can become adults who end up on the streets because they just can't handle life anymore?
I agree with you 100%. I have a 17-year-old. He's my stepson. He's my fiance's son, and he's been living with us for 4 years. So I've had a break from when I was in high school to 25 years later now, right? I graduated high school 25 years ago. And wow, what a culture shock. So I went into the principal's office. He's had some little behavior stuff, nothing too crazy, just whatever, but just going in there to deal with it. And the principal at his high school, he's 17 years old. She says to me, well, he's having some anxiety because you've expressed to him that he needs to get his act together, or when he's 18 years old, he's going to have to move out. And I said, yeah, that's exactly what I told him. And she says, you can't tell him that. And I said, excuse me? And she said, yeah, you can't talk to these boys like that. You can't say these things. It gets them all confused. It gets them all messed up. And I said, well, it's pretty straightforward what I'm saying. You either need to be succeeding in school, doing what you need to be doing. Because we're not talking about, hey, like this kid's going through some trauma type stuff. He's being lazy. He's being, things that a smart kid could totally do stuff. And then I get further into looking at it. Like, I had to get 27 credits to graduate high school. I think maybe you could fail 1 or 2 classes, maybe, and still graduate back, 25 years ago. These guys can fail an entire year of school. They've got counselors telling them you're on track to, graduate, while they're continuing to fall behind. And there's no accountability. There's no ownership.
What kind of kid are you producing now?
Yeah.
And I heard this word that it's just like stuck in my brain. You want to produce anti-fragility. You don't want to have fragile little snowflakes. You want to be able to tell somebody, look, you got to do a better job. Look, I know you can do better. That's not good enough. Okay. Like, you can't just like walk on eggshells with kids when they come out into the workforce. You got to be able to say what you're thinking, because anti-fragility, it's like toughness, but that's the word they use now. We're producing kids who are just not prepared to deal with life. And I just don't quite understand it. I don't understand how we got this way and how we came this far. You're an older millennial, I guess. I'm a Gen Xer. Yeah. My dad was like, do better or you're out of here. Like, you better stop effing up, or you're going to get kicked out. And if I of course that made me feel bad, but I didn't screw up. I wanted to move out when I was 19. So,
and so that, coming back to the academy stuff and those things, teaching guys to work hard and show them what they can accomplish with hard work and all those other things, rather than, powdering their butts and telling them, oh, it's going to be okay. Oh, well, at least you woke up today.
And you're yeah.
At least you woke up.
Got up today. You did your best. Way to go.
We don't do that at the Other Side Academy. One of the things that we're taught all the time, and I remember this being said to me by my mom growing up. She said, why would you want a pat on the back for stuff you're supposed to be doing anyways? And that is very much our mindset at the Other Side Academy. Now, we do tell people when they're doing good, and we do honor their achievements and their growth and stuff. But our mindset is, maybe it's an old school mindset, but it seems to work to help people get out of their addiction and their negative behaviors.
Calling people out. I mean, I think it was the guy who founded AA who said it all begins with truth. And if you've created this facade, you're blocking the truth, you're avoiding the truth, you're duplicitous, you're never going to get to the next step in life, and you're never going to deal with your internal monsters, like you said. And
if every problem in your life, if every broken relationship, if everything that has happened that you wish was different is something outside of yourself's fault, then you're screwed. You can't fix it, right? And that's what we've kind of instilled in life now, is everything is not your fault. It's because this happened to you. It's because this is how this is. It's because you see things this way, or this person's treated you that way. There's no personal accountability anymore. Yeah. And so therefore, a lot of problems are not getting solved. And so back to your question, why do you think the government doesn't? Because they can't say, you know what, we've been doing this wrong. Let's reset this. And, Portland, Chicago, a lot of these cities, a lot of these places where they have just legalized drugs and legalized this crazy behavior. I went to Pennsylvania with Dave on a business trip maybe a year ago. And we went to a place called Kensington. And so this is a slum in just outside of Philadelphia. And you're talking about just an open air drug market. There's people laying on the street dying. I mean, you can see it here in Salt Lake City. You can drive up and down the streets here and that there are people dying in front as people just walk by and let it happen and do whatever. And that's what we've done. Police officers sitting there watching them because they can't do anything about it. Because if they take them to jail, they'll just be out in the next day or two. So it's not even worth their time to do the paperwork or do anything, because these guys are not choosing to do this. They're victims of their circumstances, and we should, and they should be some kind of protected class. Well, what we're doing is we're killing our society. We're telling people that it's okay. And you see the numbers of fentanyl, of people overdosing. I mean, answer me this. Which is the bigger problem? The Mexican cartels and China or whoever, whatever, wherever it's coming from, making that? Can you stop them from making that? Wouldn't the solution be to work on the American people that are bringing it here, right? The supply and demand.
And pushing it.
Yeah. Well, no, the demand is here in America because that mindset that I talked about.
Yeah.
I don't want to be uncomfortable. I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to do these things. If we can fix that problem, the drug problem goes away.
Yeah.
Because there's no longer a demand.
Yeah. And that's the part about this environment we're in, that it's just so incredible to me. 100,000 accidental drug overdose deaths last year. That category of accidental death used to be really small, and drug overdoses was a small percentage of it. Now it's massively huge.
Yeah.
And it's all people just basically choosing to check out. And I mean, I just listened to an audiobook called The Least Among Us that the governor mentioned when he was at Other Side Academy giving a speech. And I learned that these fentanyl pills are completely inconsistent in their dosages. And so people are dropping dead all over the place all the time. And it's not reported by the media because usually these people are down and out, and they've broken all these bridges with their families, and they're just living day by day, kind of like how you described, how Dylan described. And there's no rock bottom before you die. It's just like, oh, 1 out of 10, 1 out of 100 fentanyl pills is going to kill you, is going to kill somebody because the dosage is off. And then they drop dead. They tried Narcan. All these drug addicts I talk to on the streets have Narcan, but if they don't do it fast enough or it's too strong of a dose, they're just dead.
Yeah.
And what can you do with this big population of people out there on the streets to begin to get through to them that they just have to somehow stop? It just seems like their brains are just reformatted to just go after that substance now. Do you see any solution to that problem in the short term?
I think there has to be consequences for our actions. I think we've leaned away from that. We've gotten softer. Now, granted, there's people that are drug addicts, and I was a drug addict. It skews your brain. It does some other things, but I was also a lot of other things. And
what was your drug of choice?
I was a meth addict. And so those things dovetail together. There's a whole lot of other things that are going on besides just drug addiction, right? There might be the guy who had a back injury, got on some pain pills, and, then got strung out on that, right? Started losing his job and those different things. But that's a small portion of the thing. There's a whole group of people out there that are committing fraud, crime, stealing, violence, all these other things because they're living in that world of drug addiction. And so as we put this kind of blanket, no consequence thing on being a drug addict, we're now allowing all kinds of other negative behaviors to just run rampant in our society, right? So there has to be some consequence. Sometimes people are like, well, prison's pretty harsh for I never went to prison for just using drugs. And honestly, I did 8 years in prison, and I don't know of very many people that went to prison just for using drugs. Most of the people that were in prison are there because of the ancillary things that they did while on drugs. I was a burglar. I was violent. I would carry a gun with me. I committed fraud. I did all these things, all these different things. It became an addiction in and of themselves, a lifestyle. And I was in prison with guys that were doing those same types of things. And I ran the streets with those people. But if you asked them, it's because they were high. So there's got to be some consequences. There's got to be some consequences also for not just for the people that are using and are committing these negative behaviors and doing that stuff, but there needs to be some consequences for our elected officials. There needs to be some consequences for the pharmaceutical companies. There needs to be some consequences for the advertiser and the media that push these agendas on people, right? I get up in the morning and I watch the news, and every commercial that's on in the morning is a new pharmaceutical drug being pushed out there with feel better, look better, do better. I mean, they're misprescribing drugs now that are meant for one cause, to help people with weight loss, to help people with all these things, right? Just this society that we've created of this deal. So accountability, consequence is the only way something's going to change, is if there's consequences for the negative actions. If there's no consequences for negative actions will continue to move forward.
Yeah. Yeah. We had it, Salt Lake City District Attorney Sim Gill on this program because there's so many homeless people who with mental disorders running rampant, victimizing other homeless people. And I was like, what's going on here? And he told me they just cannot keep all these people in jail or prison. Because if they're not competent to stand trial, if they're mentally unfit to stand trial, you can't have a trial. You can't commit these. And I said, well, why don't you commit them? Like commit them to a mental institute. Oh, we do that all the time. It's a pink slip. They get it. That's it. They got the pink slip. They're committed. There's no place to put them. There's no beds. And it's a crazy situation right now. It is really nuts. So the people who are hitting other people in the head, screaming obscenities at the top of their lungs, there's literally no place for these people to go right now.
Yeah.
And so, obviously the other side, Village wants to tackle mental disorders. That's a huge, huge issue. Do you think that through this same kind of model, they can successfully do that?
I absolutely believe that there is some kind of graceful force or something that is behind, the people at the academy. Joseph, Tim, with their vision of creating the academy, bringing Dave in from Delancey Street. There is nothing I don't think that these men and the vision that they have in their mind can't create and happen, because they've traveled the world. I've watched my fiance works at the Village, and she's gone to London. She's getting ready to go to Canada to do these. They are investigating what actually works. I mean, that was Joseph's whole goal for starting the Other Side Academy, is he saw that the criminal justice system was broken, and in his years of social science had found things that actually worked. And so that's why he created the academy. That's why he said, well, I'll start one. If you're not going to back something like this that actually works, then we'll start one and we'll see how it goes. And so I do absolutely believe that it's possible. It requires the community. It requires some support. It requires some faith, and my invitation is to anybody out there that has questions. The Other Side Academy, we're open to give you a tour to help you understand, because some people will be like, well, that's just too hard. They yell at you sometimes. They do. Wow. If getting put in my place verbally or embarrassed in front of my peers for a minute to get my attention, to snap me out of something, is too harsh compared to the hundreds, if not thousands of people that I victimized while I was out there running amok doing what I was doing. Mm-hmm. If that's harsher for me to have gone through that than what I did to other people, you really got to take a new perspective on some stuff. Mm-hmm. The hardcore in your face truth that we feed each other at the Other Side Academy is all covered with love. It is out of a sense of love. It is trying to pull somebody who's broken out of that dark hole. And the only way to do it is with truth and letting somebody see who they are and what that is. So my invitation is anybody that has questions that wants to see what an effective, we have Fortune 500 companies come and tour our place because they want to institute in their organizations a level of accountability that we have in ours. They come in and they take tours and they do groups to sit and see, what could we implement in our companies because we are lacking accountability in our company and we're failing,
Yeah.
So,
well, it's awesome what's going on, and it's great to see that finally the other side village is breaking ground and getting built, and that those I guess your crews are helping actually build those tiny homes. Is that part of it?
So
too?
there's a number of we haven't been building the tiny homes. There's been a number of tech schools, trade schools, other builders that do modular homes and stuff that have all, come together. They have about 30 of the homes already built. They're being stored. They're just ready to be dropped on the foundations out there. There's been some hangups out there at the site because of,
contaminated dirt.
Yeah. Bureaucratic stuff, different things that's gone through. There was the big rains last year, all the snow last year, filled that whole place with water and did a whole bunch of things, but it's moving forward. And one thing I do want to say that just made me think of this, what we were talking is, the cool thing about the Other Side Village is it's not, here's a set of keys, now you're not homeless anymore. The people that are going through the Other Side Village and will qualify to get into those homes are going to go through a year-long program, much like the Academy, a lot softer, not quite as in your face, because these guys are dealing with some other issues, but they're going to spend a year learning how to live life the way you would inside of a community. And we call it the Village Prep School. So it's not here's keys, now you're not homeless, because we already know how that formula works. You hand them the keys, they live in the house, then the neighborhood gets destroyed because all the guys that don't have the ability to live in a community, don't have the social maturity, don't have those things in place, don't have the community mindset or the understanding of cause and effect, consequences for their actions, will come in and destroy that space. And so what we do is we train, we teach them what it's like to take care of themselves, to take care of their neighbor, to keep an eye on what that is in their community. And then that's how they can get into one of those homes, but it's not going to be just, here you go. Mm-hmm. Now you're not homeless.
They can get kicked out probably too, right?
Yeah, they can. It's going to be a structured community, and there's going to be some expectations, not too crazy, not anything that's above what any one person is willing to do. But it's not just, hey, here you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. This is the housing first model, the way it is now. We've reported on the Magnolia apartments. Mm-hmm. Nobody can get kicked out. Yeah. They can smoke drugs in their apartment all day. One guy ripped all the drywall out of his apartment and threw it out the window. Yeah. He didn't get kicked out. It's like,
and
it's
they're raising
insanity.
Children in those environments. And granted, there's mothers that have children that are destitute. They're not able to take care of, but they're raising children in that environment. And what are those children going to do? They're going to be the same. They're going to be in the same situation. They can't see past right here, mm-hmm. because that's all they've known. And so that,
we've been trying to get to the bottom of it. Why are they not kicking these people out? I mean, there's such a need for housing right now. They're destroying these units, and we cannot get to the bottom of it because the director of it, Michelle Flynn, she's probably a perfectly nice person, and I'm sure there's a logical explanation, but why are these people not being kicked out? I just don't. I don't see it.
Because it becomes a social crusade. It becomes like you said, I don't know who Michelle Flynn is, mm-hmm. but I think it becomes a crusade, and they say, hey, we're standing up for these people. And they get blinded to the fact that, granted, your heart might be in the right place. You're seeing a marginalized group of people. You're seeing somebody who's in a destitute state, and you want to stand up for them. But make sure you're standing up for them the right way. Just like we were talking about, you see all these guys out here on the streets just dying left and right, living horrible lives. That is not compassion. That is not compassion to let people do whatever they feel they need to do in the moment. Mm-hmm. And that's part of the problem is we've become a society where it's like, well, just do what feels right now. Mm-hmm. No, do what is right now. How about that? How about we do what is right and quit doing what feels right?
Yeah. You don't want to make anybody feel bad, though. Yeah. Well, Jordan, thanks so much for coming on.
If you'd like to be a bigger part of our program, go out to utahstories.com, subscribe to our free digital newsletter, or consider becoming a member for $5 a month. We did introduce a paywall. We had to do it because we have to pay our writers more. With your $5 per month contribution, it goes into examining the powers that control the underbelly of Salt Lake City. And with your contribution, we're going to mail you Faces of Utah magazine. It's a brand new magazine we are launching, and it's full of awesome entrepreneur success stories. But the mission behind it is to help decentralize the economic power in Utah by showing you how to support the best locally owned businesses. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.